The Institute would like to thank the Spiritual Truth Foundation for their cooperation in allowing us to make this tape. Question: would it be true to say that each reflection of the Spirit has to work out its own progress and the common benefit from the lessons learned by other reflections of the same Spirit? Yes, they are all parts of the one soul, which expresses themselves in different forms. You become increasingly conscious of more and more of yourself. Question: and there is a point in evolution at which all those different parts are joined? Yes, in infinity. Question: would it be true to say that each of these sections incarnate only once, and that, while reincarnation would be true when considering the complete soul, it would be untrue of each section? It depends on what has to be fulfilled. Only when some special mission has to be performed would the same portion of consciousness incarnate more than once. Question: what do you mean by different parts of the same consciousness? It is hard to answer you because you do not understand what living really means. Life to you has expressed itself particularly in its lowest forms. You cannot visualize real life. Living intensely in a consciousness that is superior to anything which you conceive. The highest experience of the mystic, the greatest inspiration of the artist, the rapture of the poet, even these are but faint shadows of the reality which we call life in spirit realms. When you cannot appreciate that because your expression is limited to a world of matter that vibrates slowly, how can I explain it to you what consciousness is and how it is able to register itself? Do you see my difficulty? If you had a measure of comparison, it would be easier. But you can only compare light with darkness, sunshine with shadow. You cannot compare the colours of the rainbow with colours that are beyond your means of understanding and appreciation. Question: are there different virtues or facets of characters that are split? No, not at all. It is not another facet of the individuality at all. When you ask these questions, it is like trying to explain to one who has been blind from birth what the colour of the sky looks like when the sun is shining. You have no standard of comparison. Question: does not your explanation of split consciousness explain the same truth as F.W.H. Meyer's declaration regarding group souls? It is really the same thing, except that it is not a grouping of different souls, but a union of the different portions of one consciousness returning to the complete whole. Question: it seems that when the different parts of consciousness are reunited, each would lose its own individuality. Does the stream lose itself when it flows into the mighty ocean, or is the ocean many streams? Does the note of the violin lose itself when it merges into the harmony created by the whole orchestra? Question: why does not the spirit world give us proof of reincarnation? What could be evidence of reincarnation that you could not explain by spirit control? You will only accept it when your consciousness is ready, when it becomes clear to you that it is the law. That is why there are many in my world who say it does not happen. They say it does not happen because they have not yet reached the stage of consciousness when they know it does happen. Can a mystic explain his mysticism to a man of business? Can an artist explain to those not endowed with his sensitiveness what his inspiration is? He cannot. They are on different mental planes. Question: does the soul know when it is about to reincarnate? The soul knows, but cannot express itself through the mind. The soul, which is the Great Spirit, expresses itself through all eternity, gradually, step by step. And at any stage, there is a vast portion still not expressed. Question: is it then unconsciously done when a soul reincarnates? It depends on the state of evolution of that soul. There are many souls who know they have incarnated before. There are others who do not. Their souls may know, their consciousness may know, but it may not be known by the mind. You are touching the greatest mysteries of life, and I find it very hard to discover words in your English language to express the things of the Spirit. Question: if life is continual change and evolution, and reincarnation is a fact, how can we be sure of meeting our loved ones when we pass over, and of enjoying the life of bliss with them promised to us? Love will always know its own, for love is the greatest force in the universe. Love will always attract its beloved, and love will always meet its love, for nothing can prevent the union of those who love. Question: but with reincarnation there will be continual separation. Does that fit in with the idea of eternal bliss? Your idea of eternal bliss does not fit in with my idea of eternal bliss. The universe and the laws in it are as the Great Spirit made them, not as his children make them. The wise man changes his mind as he faces new facts, because he knows that he cannot alter the facts to please his fancy. Question: if it is true that we have been through countless lives before this one, why is it that we are not more progressed and ideal than we are? You can be in the world of matter and be a saint. You can be in the world of matter and be the lowest of the low. It does not depend on the earthly plane. It depends on the evolution of the soul. Question: have we still an infinite number of suffering and struggling lives to go through in the future, as in the past? Yes, infinite struggle, suffering through the crucible of pain. Does the Great Spirit express itself? Suffering tries the Great Spirit. Suffering enables the Great Spirit within to emerge purified, strengthened, refined, even as the gold emerges from the ore by crushing, by refining. Until it has been through these processes, it is not revealed as gold. Question: if that is so, what is the use of the ideas of a heaven after death? That which you consider heaven today, you will not consider heaven tomorrow. For happiness consists in striving, always striving for the higher and the higher beyond that. Question: if a soul is reincarnated, does it come back to the same nationality as it functioned in the last incarnation? Indian to an Indian and British to British, for example? Not necessarily. It will choose that country and that race which is necessary for its new unfoldment. Question: does the same thing apply in matters of sex? Yes, it does not necessarily come back to the same sex that it had before. Question: can it be true that we are punished for our sins in another life on earth, as well as having to atone before we can progress in the spirit world? Would God punish us twice for the same sin? It is not always a question of punishment, but of evolution, of a task to be learned, of another link to be forged in the chain of the soul's education and upliftment. Reincarnation does not always mean that you are to be punished. It often means that there are gaps to be filled. Sometimes they are chastening ones. Sometimes they are lessons which have not been learned. It does not always mean punishment. You cannot be punished twice. When you have an understanding of the law, you will marvel at its perfection, for it cannot be unevenly weighted on one side. The law is perfect because the Great Spirit is perfect. Question: can you tell of anyone on the other side who knows for a certainty that he or she has gone through one or more periods of reincarnation in this world? Yes. When the soul has evolved to the stage where it is necessary for it to know, it knows. It cannot see the light until its eyes can stand the light. I will not give names, for they would not be evidence. I have said before that all which is true of reincarnation can be explained by control. I speak of the laws of the Great Spirit as far as my own understanding reaches. I only speak the truth as I know it. If there are some who do not agree, I do not mind. It does not matter if others do not accept it. When they have lived as long as I have, they may change their minds. Question: there is a lot of controversy regarding reincarnation. Would it not be wiser to concern ourselves with survival? It is better to be in the light than in the dark. It is better to have knowledge than ignorance. It is better to know the laws than not to know the laws. It is always better to search for truth diligently and patiently, rather than to sit still. It is always better to strive for progress. Survival is not the end. It is only the beginning. For when you understand that you are a part of the Great Spirit and because of that you pass through the avenue of death unharmed and unchanged, that is not the end of all things. That is only the beginning. Earthly life. Abortion. At what point is it wrong? The answer is from the very minute it is done, it is wrong. Listen, you have no power to create life. You have power to transfer life. You have no right to destroy its expression. Abortion is akin to murder. From the moment of conception, the spirit has incarnated into a woman's womb. When it is aborted, it will continue to be a spiritual body, however immature, and grow and develop. You may have destroyed the means of physical expression, but you have not destroyed the spirit that was there. Abortion is interference with the embryonic spirit, which is developing according to its natural growth. There are qualifications when the motive is right that will always be taken into account. I do not know of any evolved being in my world who favours abortion, but always there is the qualification that the motive must be taken into consideration. The act itself is condemned. You do not create life. You should not therefore end the means by which it expresses itself. If those who practice abortion realized they were not merely getting rid of matter, but a living entity with whom one day they will be confronted, I think there would be fewer abortions. From the moment of conception, there is the beginning of an individual who will never die and continue to grow in my world. Accidental death. I am not happy with the word accident because I know only of cause and effect in operation. Whatever you regard as accidental can be due only to the operation of the law of cause and effect. Question. If a child dies as a result of an accident, was that intended by the Great Spirit? The whole of life is controlled by law. The Great Spirit is responsible for law, but law works through human beings. You have intelligence and reasoning. If you choose to put your head under a train, it's no use blaming the Great Spirit. Air disasters. Question. Are they planned as karmic debt of victims and their relatives? If planned, why do people have premonitions of them, as these sometimes change the whole course of events? This is a question. I don't like the word planned. It presupposes that there is a deliberate attempt to plan a tragedy in your world. Everything that happens is due to cause and effect. As to the victims, I must use your language of these tragedies. Do not forget that there is another side to the picture. Death, to people in your world, is something to be feared, but death to us is something of the nature of rejoicing. There are many in our world who cry when babies are born into yours. We rejoice when death brings freedom to those who die. It may be hard to understand, but destiny has its part in the great eternal scheme. This is a complex subject in which fate and free will play their parts. Both are true. There is a restricted free will within the destined fate. This is the simplest way that I can put it. As to the premonitions, these occur because individuals momentarily remove themselves from their usual three-dimensional and are able to experience, however fleetingly, time as it exists in its own sphere. What you must try to realize is that time is an eternal present. It is your earthly relationship to time that determines what you call past and future. If you escape the three-dimensional barriers and get in touch with time as it really is, then you are aware of what is the future to you at the present time. Now, as to what use is made of this awareness is another matter. It can appeal purely on a super-physical level or on a spiritual one. The purely psychic is not the same as the spiritual. You have what you call extrasensory perception, which can have no relationship to your spiritual nature, but be merely an expression of your physical senses. Age. Do not confuse physical age with spiritual maturity. It is not the number of years that matter, but the growth, development and unfoldment of the soul that is temporarily manifested through the body. It is not the plan of the Great Spirit to increase the number of physical years that your body should exist in your world. What should happen is that when the spirit is ready, the body will die, just as the apple drops from the tree when it is ripe. So forget the physical years. They do not matter. The whole object and essence of earthly life is to enable the spirit to have the kind of exercise, education, and experience that fit it to begin its life in our world. If the spirit does not have the experience to equip it for our world, then it is like a child who has gone to school, who has not learned the lessons, and is not ready for the adult life that follows. Anesthetic. Question. Where is the spirit, or that part which survives after death, when a person is under an anesthetic? I do not know. It might be anywhere. It depends on the evolution of the person as to how far it can go and where it goes. Anguish. Question. Does anguish come from within or without? It can be both. What you must appreciate is that earthly life provides a polarity which is not available in our world. In our world, people of the same stage of evolution are in the same spiritual sphere or plane. In your world, you are mixing all the time with people of varying stages of evolution. You get opportunities for all the opposites to be encountered. Thus, you can have light and dark, heat and cold, all this is the purpose of earthly life. It provides the means by which the soul comes into its own. Armageddon. Question: is there any truth in the prophecy of a rapidly approaching final Armageddon? No. There is no truth in the idea of an approaching Armageddon. What must be realized is that all the people who helped to compile the Bible were, in greater or lesser degree, psychic and, like all those endowed with the gifts of the Spirit, their inspiration came to them in symbolic form. Now, spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. You must not read symbolism as reality. The impress of our world on yours is in pictorial representation, and it is for you to interpret that which is received. It is not true that there will be a final Armageddon in which the whole world of matter will be destroyed, and then the Nazarene will come once more in the flesh to be acclaimed Lord of all the world. All life is part of evolution, and there is no end to the physical world. It will improve, it will grow, it will evolve, and man improves and grows and evolves. In all life there is no beginning and no end. Question: is it of any use that Armistice Services should go on year after year? It is better to remember those you call dead for 2 minutes than not to think of them at all. But I do not see what good can come when you celebrate the armistice with a display of military might, with rifles and bayonets, with soldiers, with the firing of maroons, and with all that comes with war. Could you not have an armistice that was a spiritual service? Question: would it not be folly for Great Britain to refrain from arming in view of the undoubted fact that other great powers of Europe are armed to the teeth? Have I not already said so many times that you think in terms of one country and one people, while I think in terms of the Great Spirit and all his children? I tell you that you will not find peace by making machines of destruction. You find peace when there is a desire for peace, and when all people live by the law of love and service. I do not think only of one country and one race of people. I think of all peoples as one, as part of the Great Spirit. They are all his children. Until you apply his laws to your world of matter, you will have war and destruction, pestilence, havoc, chaos, and bankruptcy all over again. Astral travel. It happens very simply that the real you leaves your body and is able to travel vast distances, sometimes into our world, and sometimes into the further reaches of your world. Actually, every one of you travels astrally when you go to sleep. Automatic writing. Question: why is it that automatic writing of all psychic exercises seems to be the least reliable? It all depends on the mediums. If they are not developed, They cannot distinguish between the thoughts that they pick up from your world and the thoughts which come to them from ours. This is a matter of development, for as the mediumship unfolds, so it begins to reject the impressions of your world and becomes more susceptible to the influence of our world. You must not blame us because your instruments are not developed. We can only work with the material that you give us. Birth. Question. In view of conditions prevailing today, is it wise to bring fresh children into the world? We teach personal responsibility. Though the world is filled with chaos, anxiety and strife, though it is filled with bitterness, antagonism and hatred, a new world is fashioned out of the striving and miseries which are endured. Some there must be who are to become its standard bearers. The race must go on. The spirit must perfect itself through struggle, difficulty and labour. Humanity marches onward, not because it treads an easy path, but because it conquers all difficulty and emerges triumphant. Fear is always the worst enemy. It is born of man's ignorance. Birth control. You have been given free will and a conscience to distinguish between that which is wrong and that which is right. It always depends on the motive. Say that once, say it 100 times. What is your motive? It is that which counts, nothing less. Broadcast explanation. Question. If you were asked to broadcast on the truth of spiritualism, what would you say? Life cannot die. I tell you that you are immortal, deathless, that the ones for whom you have mourned, for whom the tears of sorrow have streamed down your cheeks, stand silently by your side. Silent to you because you cannot hear them, but their voices have cried out in anguish for a long time in their striving to reach you. You are the dead who are unconscious of life as it really exists. You have closed your eyes to all the beauties of the Great Spirit's universe. You have allowed yourselves to register only the infinitesimal fraction of an earthly world. All around you, the whole atmosphere teems with multitudinous life. If you are wise, you will open the windows of your souls so that you can become aware of that mighty power of the Spirit which will strengthen you and encourage you. Brotherhood. We preach the gospel of the spiritual brotherhood of all peoples with the Great White Spirit as the common Father. What stands in the way is the earthly conception the Church is built on error, the usurping of privilege, the pride and the power of petty tyrants who hold the whip hand. As our teaching grows in your world, it will mean the end of separateness between peoples. It will mean the end of national barriers. It will mean the end of race distinctions, class distinctions, colour distinctions, and all the distinctions between churches and chapels, temples, mosques and synagogues. For generally all will learn that they have a part of the Great Spirit's truth, and that the part enshrined in the heart of every religion in no way contradicts that portion that is precious to them. Capital punishment. I have never hesitated to say what I regard as spirit teaching, that one murder does not justify another. The people of your world must distinguish between justice and revenge. To send any soul unprepared into our world may justify the lowest pack of humans in your world, but it accomplishes nothing. Justice should be done. By your world performing murder, it has not increased by one iota its spiritual upward evolution. Instead, it has descended and indulged in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. When passion usurps reason, what follows cannot be right. We must adhere to principles which we know are true, because they are founded on the indisputable fact that life continues after physical death. You create more and more troubles by sending into our world people who are unprepared for it. In some cases, the execution is performed on the wrong individual, and justice is not done. Life is sacred, and it is not yours to give or take away. Life is your responsibility. Life is not created by matter. Matter is created and sustained by life. Life is of the Spirit. Life emanates from the Great Spirit. Life is divine. When you deal with life and its expressions, you should always adopt the highest standards of mercy, compassion, and sympathy. Make sure that your motive is right in whatever you do. You will not solve your problems that way at all. Love is the fulfilling of the law. Whatever you do must be an attempt to help, not to exact revenge. Another murder does not excuse the first one. Killing by the state does not solve any situation. If you meet force by force, you are not encouraging the power of goodness, compassion, and kindness to be exercised. All punishment must be remedial and redemptive. The object should always be to enable the soul to come into its own. To send into our world souls that are unready merely increases problems. It does not lessen them in your world or in ours. Besides, you can make mistakes. Children. Question. Is it fitting for children to be born into this pitiful world? As far as I see it, the answer is to be found in human free will. I do not think that the world pitiful is a fair description of your world, though such a blackness covers many parts of it. The earth has its part to play in a universe of ordered creation. The earth is one of the steps in the ladder of life. It is one of the spheres of being through which every individual has to pass as part of the equipment, the training for the spirit. If the earth were not necessary, then the earth would not exist. The fact that it does exist is evidence of the part it plays in the divine evolutionary scheme. Communication in the spirit world. Until people learn to commune without speech, speech is used. And the earth and higher planes. Question. When spirits who have left the astral plane communicate with the earth, do they have to come down to the astral plane to do so? Oh no. They can always find others through whom their message can be transmitted. They can always use instruments, but they would have to be evolved not only beyond the astral, but much more than that. It must not be supposed that only those in the astral, which is the next stage beyond the physical, can communicate with your world of matter, for that is not so. For many states or spheres beyond that, it is possible to have direct communication, always depending on your finding an instrument in the world of matter capable of receiving your vibrations. Communicating spirits. Question. Does the communicating spirit know whether he has registered on our consciousness in sleep state? No, not always. We do not always know at seances at the time how much is transmitted. It is often the same when impressing people. Compensation and retribution. Question. If a person has been good, will he suffer in any way for not believing the truth of survival, even if he has been told of it? Good, bad, I do not know what these words mean. It will depend only on the life he has led, the service he has rendered, the opportunities he has taken to unfold the Great Spirit that is within him. That is all that counts. It is better to have knowledge than ignorance, but the only test is the way you have lived your life from day to day. Conception. Question. At what point after conception does a spirit enter the body of a baby? I know that many will not agree with me, but I say that from the moment the two seeds have become one, and there is, provided in that very miniature form, a vehicle through which a spirit can function. From that moment, the spirit starts its earthly career. Conduct. Question. How should a spiritualist conduct himself or herself in these times? Those with knowledge should never allow fear to find a lodgment within them. Your world has had many troubles. It will have troubles until spiritual principles are the foundation on which orders of society are built. To try and erect these on a materialistic basis is equivalent to building on quicksand. You cannot have peace without while there is war within. How can there be cooperation when hatred, violence, enmity, greed and sloth are the expressions of too many people? Love is the fulfilling of the law. You must love one another because you recognize that every individual in your world is your spiritual brother or sister, and that the whole human family consists of spiritual kith and kin. This is what the Great Spirit has done by implanting into every being a portion of its own divinity, so that the chain of the Spirit in which you are all links girdles the whole of your world. At present there is no recognition of this eternal fact, that primarily you are spiritual beings, none of whom can live in isolation from others. that your evolution is bound up with one another, that you advance or retreat collectively. This is your responsibility. I have always said that knowledge brings responsibility as to how it is to be employed. Once you are aware of spiritual truths, once you are familiar with the working of the power of the Spirit, you should have no fear of today or the morrow. No harm will befall your spirit if you live according to what you know and what has been revealed to you. You will come through unsinged, no matter what the fire. You cannot be spiritually hurt or crushed by whatever happens in your world. You have all had evidence in your own lives of what the power of the Spirit can do when conditions are right. Unfortunately, those who are aware of these vital truths are the few and not the many. The majority think that power resides in matter, in force, in domination, in tyranny, in slavery. But all the children of the Great Spirit are born to be free in body, mind, and spirit. Gradually, as these truths infiltrate and permeate everywhere, the children of earth will live in greater liberty, and a brighter lustre will be their everyday existence. You have not come to the end of the history in this land or in any other lands. The divine power of evolution will slowly and gradually reveal itself. People on earth may block, impede, and delay, but they cannot alter the divine will. If they could overcome the will of the Great Spirit, then the earth would have crumbled a long time ago. Spirit is superior to matter. The divine Spirit is the overruling power. I always say, lift up your hearts, hold your heads high. There is nothing to fear in your world, or in ours for that matter. You will come through. Question: do spirit guides approve of cremation? Yes, always, because essentially it has the effect of putting an end to the idea that the spirit is in the physical body. Crying. It is good sometimes to shed tears, to provide relief and to bring comfort as a result. It is better to shed tears than to have within you bottled up emotions which are unexpressed. Difficulties and crisis. Difficulties are challenges. If you had no difficulties, problems, obstacles or hindrances, there would be no opportunity for your latent powers to express themselves. In moments of crisis, you become aware that you have an inner reservoir of strength on which you can call. Usually, you scratch only this surface of what you can get. There is no difficulty so great that you have not the power within the inner strength that you possess and the guidance you can receive to triumph over it. Question: are all the disasters that occur on our planet within the divine plan? In the sense that man cannot work outside the divine plan, because there is an inexorable law of cause and effect. The overruling law maintains the limitation that is imposed on man. Let me put it quite bluntly. Your scientists cannot devise a means of destruction that would completely destroy the whole of the universe. That is the limitation. Divine intervention. Question. We hear of the sea being calm at Dunkirk and of the weather being favourable in Sicily. Was this due to divine intervention? There is not intervention by the Great Spirit. The laws, the universal natural laws, have always been in existence. There is no circumstance that has ever happened or will ever happen that requires the suspension of any natural law or the intervention in any natural law. The world is ruled by natural laws, and it is not necessary for any interference to take place. If it were, then the Great Spirit would cease to be the Great Spirit, for instead of being perfect, the Great Spirit would be chaotic. Doubt as the way. When there is any doubt, withdraw into the silence where the strident noise of the physical world is stilled, and your spirit can find more expression. Then, as you attune yourself, you will find there comes an inner peace, tranquility, repose, and resolution that will enable you to be sure that what is best for you will be revealed. Dreams. How can dreams be accounted for? Some of them can hardly be accepted as memories of spirit travels. There are dreams and dreams. Some of them are capable of physical explanation, as they are only reflex action of a brain which is hushed for a while. Some of them are only caused by the food you eat. But beyond all these, there are dreams which are the memories of your experience in our world, which you retain in very fragmentary form. The reason why your dreams are so often distorted is that when you come to the planes of spirit, you are freed from the restrictions of earth, and in the effort to remember spirit experiences in earthly limitations, you get distorted. Drugs. Question. To what would you attribute the sudden increase in drug taking and addiction, especially among young people? Can we offer any tangible aid to them? Yes, you can offer healing. The power of the Spirit is always directed to the spirit or soul of an unfortunate being who has resorted to what could be dangerous drugs and who can be helped. You must try to realize that the power of the Spirit is also the power of the Great Spirit, which is the life force. It is the vitality, the dynamic, the mainspring of all existence. There is no life without spirit. Everybody who moves, breathes, or thinks does so because of the spirit. In healing, the life force is applied to the weakened vitality of the individual whose body, mind, and spirit are in disarray through the intake of certain drugs. These have caused this disharmony, and thus there is a blockage, an impediment where natural channels should be flowing freely and harmoniously with one another. If you have the gift of healing, you are a channel for this divine power, which can stimulate in the way that you charge a depleted battery and enable the life force to flow again, rid itself of the impediments and blockages which have brought ill health to the individual. This is a much greater contribution than giving the individual another drug to get rid of the previous one. As to why so many resort to drugs, This is very simple. They are in despair. They are frustrated. They are pessimistic. They see no hope for themselves. They are out of touch with reality. They have lost their spiritual way, and they can find in materialism no support for them. They look to the drug to give them a lift. But it is not the way. As I said before, nature works by evolution, not by revolution. Under the heading Death, question: how would you explain death to a child? If the child has the ability to understand what is being said, of course I would say that death is the opening of a door into a larger life, just as the cage is opened to allow the bird to be free. Depletion of the earth's resources. Question: do you agree that we have destroyed many things which can never be returned to what they were? This applies to much of what was in the ground, and it is a limited place that we inhabit. But the earth has tremendous potentialities. There is much to be revealed in your world, much to be discovered. You are not at the end of evolution. You are still in its early stages. Those who are familiar with the truths of the Spirit never despair. Their optimism is based on the knowledge that has been revealed to them. With that knowledge they can have complete faith in the overriding power. In its long history, your world has had many disasters. Man has survived them. Man has progressed in spite of himself. He will continue to evolve because evolution is part of the natural law, and spiritual evolution is part of that same law. Depression for no apparent reason. Question: what has come over our young people? They have not found their way. They have come into a world where violence rules. They believe their elders have betrayed them. They feel also that they can obtain no guidance from conventional religion. Question: how can one help another suffering from depression? They have to learn to change their outlook and to have faith built on the foundation of knowledge. Faith built on incredulity will easily vanish because it is based on shifting sands. Faith founded on knowledge will endure. Destiny. Question: what is man's ultimate destiny after the cycles of his earthly lives? Ultimate destiny? I know nothing of ultimates. With beginnings and ends I cannot deal. Life is infinite. Progress is infinite too. Cycles have neither end nor beginning. Progress is infinite. Destruction of the earth. Your world will not be destroyed overnight. The Great Spirit, with infinite love and wisdom, has devised natural laws which provide for every facet of being, mighty or minute, complex or simple. The natural laws operate by evolution, not revolution. They ensure that the power of man is restricted. There are things he cannot do. He has a measure of free will, but it is limited. Development of knowledge. Question. So what I suffer now is not necessarily my own fault. If that brings you consolation, you are welcome to the thought. I will let you into a secret. The more knowledge you have, the less choice you have. Increasing knowledge unerringly dictates the part that you must play. Those of us who have volunteered to serve must serve until our missions are accomplished. You have chosen, therefore you have no choice. Knowledge can only come when you are ready to receive it. That is how the law works. I was asked to perform a mission, and I undertook to do so. The fact that you have invited me to come and talk with you shows that to some extent I may have succeeded in relaying the wisdom of others, whose mouthpiece it is my privilege to be. There is a spiritual relationship that endures when the physical relationship has ended. The spiritual relationship is eternal. What binds is not matter, but spirit. Matter is ephemeral. Spirit is eternal. Question. Are not the experiences on this earth, such as war, pain, mental and physical suffering, disease, sorrow, love, hate, joy, and happiness, essential for the development and progress of mankind and a part of the divine plan? No, they are not. Wars are not made by the Great Spirit. Disease is not given by the Great Spirit. These are the things that the children of matter have brought upon themselves by the misuse of their free will. There are lessons to be learned, but they can be learned without the brutalities and the hideous cruelties that the children of the Great Spirit perpetrate against each other. Do not mistake the doings of man for the acts of the Great Spirit. Earthly life's purpose. The whole object of earthly life is to have a variety of experiences that will fit the spirit for the next stage beyond earth, when you have passed into our world. That is why you come to earth in the first place. Earth is the training ground, the school where the spirit learns its lessons, which will provide its equipment for the life beyond earth. For that reason, I say to you again that what you regard as the bad experiences can be the best ones for you. It is not in the sunshine that the soul finds itself, but in the storm. It is when the thunder rages and the lightning flashes. You must be sharpened, purged and refined. You must experience the heights and the depths. You must have the variety of experiences that earth provides for you. In this way, the spirit emerges stronger, fortified, ready for what awaits it when death comes. The object of all earthly existence is that the human spirit is to be quickened. The essence of life on earth offers stark contrast and polarities. It provides goodness and the lack of goodness. This does not obtain in our world, where each sphere does not have this contrast. The object of earthly life is to make available a variety of experiences to enable the soul to exercise its divine potential and emerge stronger as a result. And so you will have crimes, sin, and violence. The object of all earthly existence is that the human spirit, the divine element in all mankind and animals, and indeed in all life, is to be quickened. So what is only a spark can become a flickering light, and gradually a beauteous flame. Self-fulfillment begins, and people in your world are able to enjoy what life, not only on its surface, but in its more important inner aspects, has to offer them. Question: what is the object of earthly life? The whole object is that you shall realize what you are. You are meant to give full expression to the body and the spirit. It was equally wrong to think only of spiritual things and neglect your physical obligations, as it is to concentrate on the purely physical requirements and to neglect your spiritual duties. There should be a perfect balance, so that you can be in the world but not of the world, that your physical body should be cared for because it is the temple of the divine spirit, and that's the spirit which is in the process of growth and evolution shall have opportunities for expressing growth and evolution through the body. Question: what is the use of man's earthly experience, bearing in mind it is so limited in comparison with eternity? Eternity is the sum total of an infinite number of experiences. In eternity, every experience, every action, word and thought plays its part, however small it may be. Eternity is the result of all these accumulated experiences. And if one is lacking, then there is not a complete balance. In a vast orchestra of 200 or 300 players, the man who sounds the triangle, regarded perhaps as the most insignificant instrumentalist, has an important part to play. For if when his time comes he strikes the wrong note, or if he fails to add this sound to the volume, then the whole symphony would be distorted. You realize that? So it is with your earthly lives. It is part and an essential part of the training of the soul, and your soul will register indelibly forever the marks of that training. Evil. Question: if evil is due to man's misuse of his free will, then why should the Great Spirit endow him with that free will which he knows would be misused? How else could you have man fulfilling his destiny? Not all are evil, to use that word. There is a mixture in mankind. If you have to choose between a puppet, an automaton, and a being with potential powers of selfishness and saintliness, which would you prefer? Would you prefer man to participate in the infinite processes of creation? If so, he must have virtues and faults, for without the faults he could not have the virtues. Life is comparative. Man rises through struggle and difficulty. Man attains because attainment is not easy. but because it is hard. And that process refines the soul, purifies his nature, and makes his character grow. Darkness is where light is not. Evil is where good is not. Ignorance is where knowledge is not. If all the world were good, it would cease to be good. If all the world had knowledge, it would cease to be knowledge. If all the world had light, it would cease to be light. You grow through comparative experiences. You achieve the heights because you have tasted the depths. That which is achieved without struggle is lightly prized. That which is achieved with struggle is counted as an endearing prize. Question: would you say that something which appears evil from the human standpoint may not be evil at all? In fact, from a higher standpoint, it might be regarded as good. Too many people in your world suffering is evil. Pain is unwelcome, but this is not necessarily the case. Pain is just as much part of the divine plan as pleasure. Without pain, there could be no pleasure. Without darkness, there could be no light. Without hatred, there could be no love. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. They are the two sides of the same coin. Good and evil are fundamental and comparative. You have codes of morality in your world dependent on the place where you live. But it is not the same code of morality in every place. Our evolution is based upon the effect on the soul. This is the important thing. Anything which advances soul attainment is good. Anything which retards soul attainment is bad. Fabric of the etheric. Question: does the fabric of the etheric country have a material core of which the earth is a local example? Am I material? Is love between men and women material? Is the inspiration of an artist material? Is the appreciation of music material? The answer to these questions depends on what you call material. If you mean, is it real? Does it possess reality? Then I say yes, for the spirit is the greatest reality of life, and that which you call material, the world of matter, is but the shell which surrounds the reality. Fear. Perfect love casteth out fear. Knowledge dispels fear, for fear is born of ignorance. Where there is love and trust and knowledge, there fear cannot reign. An evolved spirit cannot be afraid at any time, because he knows that there is no experience that can come to him in any phase of life that he cannot master, for he is the Great Spirit. Fear creates its own prison for the soul. You must learn to rise above fear and not allow its vibrations to hinder you, to have perfect faith and confidence and trust, to know that you can stand on your own feet and say, I am the Great Spirit, and the wind of circumstance cannot shake me. I will rise triumphant over every difficulty. because of the infinite power which is within my soul. You have power over every circumstance. Would you limit the power of the infinite soul? Never allow fear to find lodgment within your being. It is a negative quality which destroys, vitiates, and saps. It impairs your judgment. It clouds your reason. It prevents you from seeing issues clearly. There is no problem that comes to you, to any soul, which you are incapable of solving. There is no difficulty that you cannot conquer, if you would but allow the latent divinity to rise to the surface. Freedom. Question: what do you mean by freedom? I view all questions in the light of the experience of the spirit. I see man as a spirit driving to express himself through a body, and I see millions with that spirit stifled, crushed, repressed, and trampled on. True freedom does not mean the right of every individual to do as he pleases, the right to follow every whim, caprice, or inclination. Freedom involves responsibility and understanding of the purpose for which human beings have been placed in your world.